Hello everyone, today we are going to continue the discussion about loops. So let's jump into Jupyter and see what are the problems we are going through today. So we will start by this problem. Assume you want to write a program that reads multiple values from the user and calculates their sum. You should keep reading values from the user until they input an empty string. So basically what you want to do is to allow the user to input multiple values. So assume the user will input 3, 2, and 4, then empty string. Empty string here is indicating that the user is done. So after the user is done, you should calculate the total of the user input, which is in this case, it will be 9. Now, how do you solve such problems? Since we are accumulating values, okay, we are basically summing values, we need a variable like total that will start from an initial value, okay? So from the start, this variable will have a value of 0 because we didn't have or we don't have any value yet. Then somewhere in your code, you will have a statement that take the user input, which we are going to call value, add it to the previous value of total, then assign the result into the same variable total. So basically, you need a step in your program that keep adding the new value from the user into the variable total. Okay. Of course, we said value will come from the user. So somewhere you have to read it. Value equal to input, enter a number. Okay. And we need to keep reading values from the user until they enter the empty string. So we need a loop. This is the repetition step. We need a loop in our program that basically keep reading while the value does not equal an empty string. If the value equal an empty string, you should stop the loop. So as long as value does not equal empty string, you should keep reading new values. Now, we have a reading statement outside the loop, right? However, this will not be repeated because it's not inside the loop. So we need another one inside the loop that will read that will read multiple times. So somewhere in your loop, you will have value equal to input and again enter a number. Now, one more step that is necessary here is that notice how value is a string because it's returned from the input function. So before using it, you should basically convert it to a number. I will use float here to be generic. Okay, so that's basically it. At the end of the loop, I will just print total. So let's write this program and see what are the workflow of the program. Let's see. I'll come right here and I will type the initial value of total, which is 0. Then I will basically read the first user input, okay, which is basically will be stored in the variable value. Enter a number. Will basically create my loop, which will be repeated as long as value does not equal to an empty string. Now in the loop, I will start by converting the variable value from string to float. Then I will add value to the variable total. Then I will read a new value. Input, enter a number. Okay. Now what we need to do here is just print total after the loop to see our result. So total equal to percentage 0.2f percentage total. Now when I run this and I hit 3, then 2, then 4, then I will hit empty string, so I will just hit enter, and that will terminate the program, and my total is 9. Now let's go over the code. Basically, when I input 3 in the beginning, this number is basically read in this statement. Okay, so here I am reading 3. Now 3 as a string, remember input gives you a string. 3 as a string does not equal to empty string, so you will enter the loop. Convert it to a number, add it to total. Total will start from 0, 0 plus 3. Now this is 3, and you will store 3 in total. Now, what is the purpose of this statement here? Basically, this statement will read the next input, which is in our case 2. Now, 2 as a string again will be checked at the loop condition. So is 2 equal to empty string? The answer is no. So I will enter the loop again. Now convert 2 from a string to a float, add it to total. Remember total was 3. So I will add 2 to it. Now total is 5. Then I will read a new value again, which is in our case here, it will be 4. Okay. Again, 4 is not an empty string. Convert it to a number. Total now is 5. 5 plus 4 is 9. And read a new value. Now the next value will be an empty string, which when we just hit enter, now empty string does not equal empty string is false. So I will exit the loop. I will stop the repetition. And I will come outside the loop to the print statement. And I will just print the current value of total, which is just 9. Okay. Now let's take this program and see what do we need to modify in order to make the program calculates average instead of total. So let's start. To calculate average, you might notice that I need to divide total by the number of values, right? So I need a variable to keep the number of values I have in the program. So I will create a variable count. This will represent the number of values, and an initial value for this variable will be 0, right? I will read the user input, and I will stop reading user input if they input an empty string. Now convert it to a float, add value to total, and here I need to update count. Remember, I received 1 value, so now my count should be incremented by 1. Then I will read a new value. Now, instead here of printing total, I will simply print average. However, I did not calculate average yet. Now, where do I need to calculate average? Inside or outside the loop? Now, notice how I need to calculate average after I finish reading all values. So this should be after the loop. I will just write average equal to total divided by count. Okay, so after the user finished entering the values, I will calculate the average. Now I will run this and see if you notice anything. So when I run this and I hit 2, 3, and 4, then empty string, I get the average is 3 because total is 9. 9 over 3, I have 3 numbers. The answer is 3. However, if I run this and I hit enter, so basically I have no input, now I'm going to get 0 division error. Because if I have no input whatsoever, total is 0, count is 0, I am reading an empty string at this statement. The condition value is false because empty string does not equal empty string is false. So I will skip the body of the loop, jump to this statement, and where am I calculating? I'm calculating 0 over 0, which will give me 0 division error. So I need to basically make sure I don't calculate average when I don't have any number. So basically I don't calculate average unless count is above 0. So if count is above 0, then I need to calculate average and I need to print the average. And if count is below or equal to 0, which means I have no value, I will simply print a message, no data entered. No data entered. So when I run this now, I hit 2, 3, and 4, I get 3 as an average. And now when I hit 2, let's repeat. When I just hit an empty string from the beginning, so I am entering no values, I will get the message no data entered. So the next problem we have is counting matches. I need to write a program that basically count how many negative values are included in a sequence of number. So again, I am assuming the user will provide values, and I need to count how many numbers or how many values of the user input are negative. So a quick example will be if the user put 5 minus 2, 3 minus 1, then empty string, then I should basically print out or output 2. Why 2? Because I have 2 negative numbers in the user sequence, in the sequence of number provided by the user. So let's see how to solve this problem. The first thing you might identify is I need a variable to count how many negative number. So I will call this neg count, and I will set it to 0, because in the beginning you have no negative number. Then I will read the first value from the user, just like before, value equal input, enter a number, and I will create my loop, which will be keep repeating as long as value does not equal empty string. Now inside the loop, I will simply do what? I will convert value to float. Then, can I do this? Can I write negative count equal to negative count plus 1? Notice how the purpose of this program is to calculate how many negative number, right? So I only need to increment negative count if the value is below 0, which means it's negative. So only when value provided by the user is negative, add 1 to the variable negative count. Otherwise, just do nothing. Okay, now after I finish with these 2 steps, I need to read the next value from the user by the input function again. Enter a number. Then after the loop, I need to print the result. So I will write there are %d negative numbers. Percentage negative count. Now negative d here because negative count is an integer. So when I run this and I put 2 minus 3, 5 minus 6, 9, then empty string, I have 2 negative numbers in my input, and the program correctly basically outputted there are 2 negative numbers. Now, a common theme in these 3 problems is there are 2 common steps. The first one is you always update a variable inside the loop. Negative count equal negative count plus 1. Here count equal count plus 1. Total equal total plus value. And here we have total equal total plus value. We are updating a variable inside the loop. Whenever we have such variable that we are updating inside the loop, this variable has to have basically an initial value before the loop. So we are updating total here. You should initialize or give initial value to total before the loop. We are updating count inside the loop, so you should initialize count before the loop. The second common step in these 3 problems is we have two input statement, okay? One before the loop, okay? This is just for reading the first user input, and one inside the loop. This is for reading from the second value up to the last value. Basically, this step here is the value that will keep repeated. This value here is the one that will be executed only once for the first value. One important note here is notice that the input statement inside the loop is not up here, right? It's down below. Why? Because assume you put it here. Now you will read the first value from the statement before the loop, right? So in this example, assume I will read 2. So I am reading 2 at this level of the code. Then I will enter the loop and I will read 3. But I did not utilize 2. I did not put it inside total. I did not utilize the user input. I just immediately skip it and went to 3, which is incorrect. The correct way or the correct position of the second reading statement will be after you finish processing the first value. Notice how at this statement, I am done with the variable value. So now I am ready to read a new value. So again, 2 common steps. The first one, if you update a variable inside the loop, you should initialize it before the loop. And you should have 2 reading statements, one before the loop for the first value and one inside the loop for the remaining values. Okay. Next, we are going to discuss a new topic, which is the for loop. Now, so far, we've seen one type of loop in Python, which is known as the while loop. And whenever you have a while loop, you have the while keyword, then you have a condition, right? So as long as the condition is true, you will keep repeating the loop. If the condition becomes false, you will stop the loop. Now, another type of loop is the for loop. The for loop does not take a condition. The for loop takes what we call a container. A container is basically something that can be divided into pieces, okay? Now, each time or each iteration of the loop, I will take one piece, store it inside a variable. This variable can be anything, like, for example, a variable called C. Now, what can you do with this variable? You can do absolutely everything with this variable. For example, you can print the content of this variable. So again, a for loop will take a container. This container, you will take one piece of it each time or each iteration, store it inside a variable, then process that variable. So I am done with the first piece. I will go to the second piece. Now store it inside C and do whatever I want with this variable again. So what is an example of a container? One example of container is a string. So for example, if I write for C, then in the string Adam. Now this is the syntax of a for loop. You write for, then a variable name, this can be anything, then the word in, then your container. So this is now my container. Now, I said that you will take one piece of the container in each iteration, store it in C. What do you think are the pieces of a string? The pieces of a string are the individual character. So for the first iteration, I will take the first character, store it inside C. Then I can print C. Now when I print C, I'm going to print the content of the variable, which is the first piece of the container, which is the letter capital A. Now I am done with the first iteration. So I will go to the second piece, which is the letter D. Now I will store it in the variable C, and I will print C, which will just print me the letter D. Finish with the second piece. I will go to the third piece, which is A. Then I will print it. Go to the fourth piece, store it in C, and print it as well. So this code will simply print individual letter in the container or the string. Okay, let's see this in code. So you have variable name equal Adam, then I will write my for loop, which will start by the word for, then choose any variable name, for example, car. For character, then you write in, then your container. In this case, my container is stored in a variable called name. I will write the colon, then hit enter, and I will write the body of the loop. So in this case, I will just print car. Okay. So if I run this, I will get the characters of each character of the string, each one in one line. Okay. Now, one important note to basically keep in mind here is that this is just as any compound statement. You have a header that will end with colon, and the body of the loop will be indented. Okay. Another note is char is not defined before the loop. You don't need to define it. Okay. So this is the first time we see the variable char. You don't need to define it before the for loop. This is actually this actually works as a definition for the variable char. So this statement, this loop, is defining char, and it is assigning each character of the container to this variable in each iteration. Okay. So next, let's move to the question, can we write this program using a while loop? Can you print individual character using the while loop? Let's see. So I have name equal Adam. Okay. And I would like to print individual character, which means I would like to print the character at 0, character at 1, character at 2, and character at 3. You can think about this position or this index as a variable. Name it I, for example. This variable will start from 0, and it will be incremented by 1 each time until you reach 3, right? So we've seen such problems before. We know how to do this using a while loop. So I will start by initializing the variable I to 0. Then I will keep repeating the loop while I is less than or equal to 3, right? Or instead, I can remove the equal sign and write it as 4 while I is less than 4. And you will see why I did this in a minute. So while I is less than 4, just simply print name at position I, the character at position I of the variable name, then advance the variable I, move it one step ahead, move it to the next character basically, right? Now, let's trace the program. Let's see how this program is basically executed. So I will use the same table we've seen in the previous video. I will start by I equals 0. Is the condition true or false? The condition is true, 0 less than 4. So I will enter the loop and I will write my output here. I will print name at position I. Currently I is 0. What is name at I? Remember, name is Adam. So the character at position 0 is simply capital A. Then I will add 1 to I. So now I have my table with I equal to 1. And I need to check the condition. If I is 1, is I less than 4? This is true. So I will enter the loop, print the character at position 1 of the variable name. This will print me D. Then I will increment I to 2. The condition is still true. Print the next character at position 2. Then increment I is 3. Condition is still true. Print the character at position 3, which is D. Then I will increment I. Now I is 4. However, the condition now is false, so I will stop the loop. Now, why I wrote 4 here? What do you think is the relationship between 4 and the string Adam is? 4 is just the length of the variable name, right? The length of Adam, basically. So by writing the condition using the length function like this, by doing this, I am writing a code that will work for any name. So if you wrote 4, this code will not work for strings with 3 characters or for strings with 7 characters. However, if you write I less than len of name, this code now will work for any string, basically. So let's write the code. I will start by I equals 0, while I is less than the length of name. Print the character at this position and advance the index 1 step. So this will print me the 4 character. Notice how I needed 4 lines approximately to do what I can do with 2 lines. So if you use a while loop with a string, you will write more code. A for loop sometimes can be more convenient if you have a container like a string. And this is one of the advantages of for loop, is that it makes working with container or with things like string basically much easier than when you use a while loop. Okay, now let's move to the next problem. Remember this code where I have a counter variable starting from 0, and I will keep the loop repeating as long as counter is below 5. Each time I will print counter and increment counter. We've said this will print values from 0 to 4. And we called this a count controlled loop. This is basically a loop where you know you need to go for 5 iteration. So it is controlled by the count. So you are going from 0 to 4. Can I write something like this with a for loop? The answer is yes. You can use the range function. Now, the range function is another type of, or you can think about it as it will give you a container, okay? So if you write range 5, this function here will give you values from 0 to 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each time you can take this one value, store it inside a variable. You can name this anything like counter. And by using a for loop, you are going to have one of these values inside the variable counter in each iteration, just like the while loop. So again, a for loop, which will take a container, in this case, the range function. It will take one piece of the container, store it inside a variable. Then you can do whatever you want with this variable, like printing it. Then you are done with 0, you will move to 1, store it in counter and print it. Move to 2, store it in counter and print it, and so on. So how do you write this code? You will simply write for counter or any variable name in range, and you will provide the stopping point here. So I would like to stop at 5. This will give me values from 0 to 4. So when I print counter, I will simply print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there are other variations of the range function. You sometimes will see range with 2 numbers like this. Now the first number here is the starting point. Notice how I started from 0 here. You can change this by providing an additional argument. So if I write range 1, 5, I will start from 1 instead of 0. Okay, so let me copy this. And down here, I will write 1, 5, and notice the output is 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, one other variation is you can write range 1, 5, 2. Now, what is the meaning of these numbers? This is still the starting point. This is still the stopping point. And this is now the step. The size of the step you will take in each, between each two numbers. Basically, you will start from 1, then take 2 steps, which means move to number 3, then take 2 steps again, which means move to number 5. However, number 5 is my stopping point, so I will not have 5 in my sequence. Okay? So if you write the code down here, and you write 1 as starting point, 5 as stopping point, then 2 as your step size, you will get 1 and 3. If you modify this to 8, for example, what do you get? You will get 1. Then you move 2 steps. This will move you to 3. 2 steps again. This will get you 5. 2 steps again. This will give you 7. 2 steps again. This will give you 9. However, 9 is above your stopping point, so you will basically stop. So I will get 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay. Next, we will talk about a handy tool in Python you can use whenever you use loop. So notice how in the earlier examples we have, you always have an update statement. When you are working with loop, you have an update statement where you update a variable. So you take the old value, add something to it, then store the result in the same variable. So you will write total equal total plus value, or in this case, count equal count plus 1, or negative count equal count plus 1. A shortcut to do this in Python is to do the following. So let's take this example. Assume a equals 0, then somewhere in your code you have a equal a plus 1. If you print a, you will get 1. You can basically use a shortcut, and instead of writing this, you can simply write plus equal 1. This is the same as a equal a plus 1. I'm basically adding 1 to the variable a and storing the result inside the variable a again. So when I run this, a is 1. When I, for example, write a plus equal 5, 4, and a plus equal 6, what do you think the result will be? A will start from 0, add 1 to it, now a is 1, add 4 to it, now a is 5, add 6, now a is 11. Now you can do this with any arithmetic operation we've seen. So if a was 0, or let's take 16, then if you write a slash equal 2, and you print a, what do you think the result will be? Now notice this is just a shortcut of a equal a divided by 2, which will give you 8 as an answer. You can do this as well with multiplication and subtraction. Okay. Lastly, we will go over this quick exercise. What do you think will be the result of this loop? What are the numbers you will output when you run this code? Let's see. When you run this code, you will basically start with I equals 0. The condition is true. 0 is below 5, so you will print I. You will print 0. Then you will add 3 to I. Now I is 3, still below 5, so you will print 3. Then you will add 3 again. Now I is 6. This will make the condition false, so you will stop and you will print 0 and 3. What do you think about the for loop at the next cell? What exactly will be the output? Okay, do you think it will be 0, 3, just like before? Or do you think it will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4? Let's see. If you run this code, you get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But why? Notice how for loop will assign to the variable I one value of the container. So in this case, our container is giving me 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I am assigning one value of this container to the variable in each iteration. So in the first iteration, I will print I, which equals to 0. Then I have a statement where I set I to be I plus 3. Now, after this statement, I will be 3. Then I will go back to the header of the loop, and I will take the next value of the container, which is 1. Now I totally ignored the value 3, and I assigned 1 to I, and I will print 1, then execute the addition statement again. So 1 plus 3 is 4, now I is 4. However, you will go back to the header of the loop, and you will assign 2 to I. Now you ignored 4, and you assign 2 to I, then you will print 2. You see the pattern? Basically, each time I am taking one value of the container, storing it inside I. And I don't care what happens to I inside the loop. In the next iteration, I will take the next value in my container. This is why you get this output here. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.